So, welcome everyone to our pen cutting session. Um, Before I start, I want to, quickly tell you about my story on how I learned how to cut the pen. I started calligraphy in 2001 with Mohammed Zekiria in Virginia, and he would cut my pen and trim it whenever I needed, and didn't really focus on teaching it. And actually, it's the same here in Istanbul as well. The masters expect you to kind of discover that on your own. And so I was scared to touch it, and I ruined a couple of pens. And then he told me, you never touch it. I'll help you whenever you need it. So when I was there, he made time for me, and he trimmed my pen. But when I came to Istanbul, Hasan Hoca, in like 2 or 3 lessons, after 3 lessons, he told me, you need to learn it yourself. And I was looking around, and I was just watching Hasan Hoca doing it, and I couldn't get it. I couldn't understand what they were aiming at. And there were no videos, internet wasn't very accessible for me at that point. So I couldn't access any information, and I didn't know what to do. So there was a couple of students who helped me out. And by asking them questions and taking my pen every week to class and making them comment on the problems that I had with my pen, I learned how to trim my pen. But this didn't happen like in one day. It really took several weeks. So you have to be, like in calligraphy training, you have to be patient with yourself and give yourself time and practice to learn how to master, cutting the pen. And and after a while, I started to manage it on my own. And the first time that I cut my pen and I passed the lesson with it, I remember that I was very proud of myself. It was a big accomplishment. So what we always recommend to everyone is to get low quality reed pens, low quality, that are not, very good for writing. They're cheaper than the good quality pens, and just keep cutting and ruin them, no problem, ruin them and start cutting again. And then with time, you will see that you will start managing the pen. And with Elinor together, we had a nice story in Istanbul as well. I got to know her through Mohammed Zekiria. And when she came to Istanbul, she, asked me, I that she had problems as well cutting the pen. So we sat down, and maybe you want to shortly talk about your own story on
Yes.
how you learned this process.
Okay. Well, Assalamu alaikum and hello everyone. Welcome. So what happened with me was I was also studying with Mohammed Zakaria, and even though I'm in, the United States, the same country, I live in the New York area. I live north of New York City, and he lives a little bit south of DC. So it's not around the corner. I couldn't just stop by his place to get my pens cut. And it was the same situation where he would trim them very quickly. He's a woodworker and a metal worker, in addition to being a calligrapher. And all these things, his use of tools comes very easy to him. But in my case, I was afraid of knives, to be perfectly honest. Although, I cook, and I use knives all the time, but I was afraid. And so I actually I was mailing pens to him, and he was mailing them back, trimmed. And it was ridiculous. And again, like Deniz said, one of my biggest fears was that I had like 2 reeds. And so you're afraid you're gonna ruin the cut. And, it's going to end up being an inch long, and you can't use it. And that's all there is. So the reeds are a lot softer and easier to cut than bamboo. Bamboo is harder and tougher, and the tip lasts longer, but it doesn't have the flexibility. There's a little bit of flexibility in the reed. So there's a difference. But anyway, I basically told Zach Hoja, Hoja means teacher, that I was going to quit calligraphy because it was just a pathetic situation where I was a calligrapher who couldn't cut my own pen. And he said, no, you'll get it. And then this was just about the time that Deniz had gone back to Istanbul. and she'd emailed me that she'd figured out how to trim her pens. So I hadn't been to Istanbul in years and years, and I just decided by hook or by crook I was going. And I spent a week in Istanbul. I stayed with you, I believe, and we went and visited many different calligraphers, and I asked them to demonstrate pen cutting for me. And I think they all thought we were weirdos or crazy or like, what's these people's problem? And I just saw so many different ways of trimming the pen, different tools, just different methods, different ideas about trimming the pen, some very particular, some very rough, and also worked with some of the more advanced students. And, by the end of a week, my fear was gone. And that was the main obstacle. So then after that, I started trimming pens. So the rest is history. Now I love trimming pens. And Deniz Hoca is showing us, different pens. And it is good to see, like I always tell students, you want to see the shape of the letter before you make it. You want to see what you're looking for in a pen. So I'll hand it back to Deniz, but these are beautiful pens.
Yeah. Both of them are reed pens, I believe. Yeah. And my husband is also a calligrapher. So these are the pens that he trimmed. And I took close-up photos, and I will share them with Anika. So she will, forward that to you after the session. So you can clearly see what kind of final shape we're looking for. And see the elegance of the pens. That, from the back down, gradually, it's going down and reaching the edge of the pen. And look at both sides, the parallel look. It resembles like the front part of a plane. That's what the Syrian guy who taught me the pen cutting explained to me. This is from the side. You can, clearly see what kind of shape, how it looks from the side. So I will share these photos so you can have them as reference points when you are cutting your own pens. Okay, then let's get started. Okay, so I have a reed pen here. Both ends look like this, uncut. I have a box cutter. If you want, you can use a box cutter. If you want, you can use a traditional knife. Both are good options. Some people just use this one. Some people just use the box cutter. For a couple of stages, I use the traditional knife, and then I continue with the box cutter. So all of the things that we are actually going to talk about today, they're alternatives. They're not a must. You can, maybe find other alternative ways of doing things that we're going to explain. But, just to give you ideas. And this is a makta that we also use when we're cutting the pen in a certain angle and when we are giving it a slit. If you don't have this, it's not a problem. You can use a regular ruler, for example. What we want is to have a hard surface to do the cut on. So you can either do it with a ruler, or if you have any other hard surface, or you can use the makta that they sell at craft stores for calligraphy. So what I first do, I take the reed pen. Okay. So with the pen, the dark color I will leave on top. But for example, this is the light colored that will come to the bottom of the pen. Like here you can see it. And I will use the top part to write with. Okay. So what I first do, I hold the pen. This is how I do it. Some people do it this way, for example. I will also do that in a little while. But when I begin, I take the reed pen, I take my knife, because it's very thick at the beginning. I try not to do it with the box cutter because the box cutter is more delicate. I find it a little bit dangerous, risky. So I use the traditional knife. So hold the knife like this, and not in a vertical angle, but horizontal, the same angle with your pen, and start from the back. You need to go to the front. And some pens are harder than others.
Can I just say something that
Yeah.
what I want people to look at is how Deniz is pushing with her thumb,
And I
with
will
her
get
left
up.
thumb. She's holding the pen in her right hand and pushing with her thumb. She's not pushing the knife away with her right hand. She's pushing it with the thumb. So it's very controlled.
And I'm trying to get it thin here at the front because we need to work on the front and it needs to get thin. Otherwise, I can't do the cut. So I'm trying to get it as thin as possible. See? Showing from the side. I'm trying to give it the shape that I showed you in the close-up photos. And then you get your makta and you try to see, okay, the angle of the pen is going to be like 2 fingers. In this angle, we're going to cut the pen. And the length of the pen from here till the edge should be like 2 of your fingers. You need to push your pen down, hold it very firmly, and then cut. And
so you're holding the knife like perpendicular to the surface you're cutting on.
Yeah, chop. And then after that, I give the slit. We do the slit at the very beginning, and after that, we can decide how much we need to take from the sides to reach the appropriate width that we need. So in the middle, it's like 0.5 centimeter maybe that I give the slit. And that allows the ink to flow through. Now we need to do the fine. What was that?
That's the reservoir. Like it holds very little ink, but it holds some. You would call that a reservoir.
Okay, so this is the coarse kind of work. Now I take the pen in this angle and I put it next to my thumb. And I take my box cutter. See how I hold it? Put my hand on the table. Now, you see that it's not, not a very elegant shape. And all this thread that comes out, I pull it out. So now I'm going to give it a fine, nice shape, starting again from the back, coming gradually down.
So do you notice how she pushes again with her left hand fingers?
This is what I'm doing. Yeah. See?
Or just moving her right hand very little.
These 3 fingers on my right hand, so I can, carefully give strength to the knife.
Yeah, I do it a little differently. That's interesting.
Yeah, that's what I'm just going to say. Everybody has their own way. All of it is fine. This is not a must. If you're not comfortable with this one, Elinor is going to show how she does it as well. So then I will start from the back and I will try to get the size I want. For example, this is still big for thuluth. And you can see on the tip, see how thick the tip is, the flesh here on the inside. That means I still need to get off some flesh from here, otherwise it's going to be too thick to write with. So again, I'm holding my 3 fingers on my right hand and I'm coming from the back down carefully, taking off thin layers of flesh, trying to place the knife fully on the tip of the pen so that it fully covers the whole area and moves down, cutting off the flesh that is too much. Measuring, 2 fingers fit in. Okay, so the length is okay. Now, as you can see, the cut is in the middle. And I will keep getting a couple of hairs from the right, turn it from the left, turn it from the right, from the left. Depending on the script you're learning, depending on the size you want, you can keep cutting from both sides, aiming at keeping the slit in the middle. So to check, you turn it and you check. Is it still in the middle? No, I need to get more off from this side. Flip it. You see, from this side, okay. I get off more. And I still see that here it's still too thick. There's still too much flesh. But you need to do it carefully. If you get off too much, of course, the pen is going to get extremely soft. And when you write with it, it's going to break. So that comes with experience to decide how much do I need to get off. Look at the shape. From the back, carefully, gradually, it's coming down. Turn it, see, same shape, same amount from the back. It's coming down to the front. So these are the main things that we can talk about. Of course, you're going to create problems with the tip, with the slit. Maybe you will break it. So if you break it while you are cutting it, you need to start kind of from scratch. So you will cut it off here, and then a little more from the back, you will restart the whole process. Yeah. And what we advise to continuing students who take weekly classes, if your master cuts a pen for you, just use that as a pen for the day that you need to produce your homework. So you always have a strong, ready-made, perfect pen ready for you, so you don't miss a class because you are having pen problems. Try to cut other pens and practice with that yourself. If you ruin them or you create a problem and you're not able to solve, you still have a couple of spare pens ready for you to work with and to produce your mesh with. So yeah, low quality pens are really nice to work with. And then the high quality pens you can keep for the future, once you master cutting the pen, you can use your high quality pens to write with. Yeah, these are the things I can mention. Maybe, Elinor, if you want to add something or start cutting yourself.
Are you going to do the final cut?
Well, I kind of did that.
Okay.
At the beginning.
Oh, all right. Okay.
Yeah.
That's okay. So then I can take over. I'm looking at the clock. So what do I do? Give me a minute. No. Oh, that's so beautiful. Okay, so I am going, do I need to spotlight myself? Oh, okay, so let me zoom out a little bit.
Are there any questions? Okay, I need to answer
So
the questions. Okay.
I'm going to show the things that that I use. This is a loop, you know, it's a magnifying glass, right? I'll just see what we can, um, you know, see that? I hold this right up to my eye, and when I go back to the other camera, I'll show you. But this helps me see how I want the tip of my pen, if I've gotten it. So one thing that's important to me is to have the ease of having additional pens to cut. And so, like, to me, that makes all the difference because you're not under the stress of destroying a pen. So one thing that I discovered a while back was you can find a cheap bamboo, you know, Chinese brush, right? It's the right length. It's bamboo. And you can cut, I mean, you could cut either side. I would probably cut this side. You know, I got these at a garage sale because, I mean, I'm here in the United States. Now, this is a piece of bamboo that I believe I got. I have, oh, look, it has little holes in it. I have some friends on the West Coast. The bamboo that grows on the West Coast is really pretty decent bamboo. The bamboo that grows on the East Coast is not. And I'm just realizing, you know, I wish I had thought of this earlier, but there's some dark bamboo, which of course, yeah, some like, you know, it's like black bamboo. See, this is a pen I've cut. This is very hard bamboo. And in fact, a student of mine, Darius, just sent me a whole bunch of it, but it's longer. So this is some West Coast bamboo. And this is, per Anika, suggested buying bamboo drinking straws. Now, the thing about buying them is you want to get the ones that have like about a 3/8 of an inch and no bigger diameter. And I'll tell you, like this box I ordered, you know, they're pretty fat. And for a bigger pen, that's okay. But for most Thuluth, we're cutting Thuluth pens. I prefer a slightly thinner pen, but I can use the big fat pen. The advantage of buying a box of these drinking straws is, I don't know, you get like 10 for, I don't know, between $5 and $10. So you have then backup, and it can sort of be a relief. And, you know, I don't know, I use them. So sometimes they have a little bit of a curve in them. Like here with this black bamboo, it's very high quality. It's straight. And usually the bamboo brushes are straight. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a straw. What I look for is, oh, I know, I have to switch glasses. Sorry. What I look for is the flattest side, and I usually do that by feel. Now, here's another thing is, I know Deniz loves that box cutter, or, you know, some people call it a craft knife, and I have several of them, and I occasionally use them, but for bamboo, you really need a more solid knife. And this is what we're calling a chipping knife. It's a woodworker's chipping knife. It's you can see how worn this is. It's a Pfiel, Pfiel, number 12, Swiss made. And the thing I have to do, the disadvantage of this is, I don't know if you can see from the blade, it has a very strong blade. I sharpen my knife with whetstones, which, I mean, Deniz doesn't have to sharpen her box cutter. She just cuts off, you can cut off the last bits. So, but when I sharpen this, I enjoy sharpening. It's not a big deal to sharpen it. It doesn't take very long. And then I sharpen all my kitchen knives, and then everything is sharp for a while. So I am also starting back, right? Somehow I was told that you want that part of the pen about the length of, this part of your thumb. And I have a question at the end for you, Deniz, but let me focus on this. I'm gonna focus maybe up a little bit. So what I'm doing is I'm holding, I have a good grip. I'm not white knuckling it, but I have a good grip with my dominant hand. And then I am pushing with my thumb, and I start maybe with a little curve down, right? And I'm going to put this in front of us so we can see that beautiful curve. It's like it starts steep and then you pull it out thin. It's like this is the advanced hill, and here's the bunny hill, and here it's flat if you think about skiing. And I'm not a skier, but so I'm pushing, and honestly, it takes, this is bamboo, it takes a little more. If I was demonstrating on the black bamboo, it might take all day. Now, it doesn't take all day, but I will tell you something, like with the long pieces of black bamboo, or the bamboo I occasionally buy at Home Depot, as tomato steaks, it comes 5 feet long. I used to saw it. So see how I am beginning to have that same shape, right? Now, I know, Deniz, you cut the crack now. I usually take a little time. And again, do you see how I never cut, it's so hard to articulate. I'm not pushing out. Everything is controlled. I'm holding.
Everything's controlled, yeah.
Yeah, I'm mostly just holding the knife, and I love this handle. It's very ergonomic. And I'm pushing with my non-dominant finger. And I mean, you see that? You get a callus. Sometimes I put like a Band-Aid there when I'm going to be trimming a whole bunch of pens. So what I want is, just like Deniz said, you want these two sides to be symmetrical, right? And what my question, Deniz, is about the people who save the shavings from their pens.
Yeah, it's part of the tradition. It's not a must. You can do it. Some people save it, put it in a box, and later they bury it in some soil,
See, now I also heard that the shavings from your pen are saved and then used as the fuel to heat the fire before your body is washed after you die. I have a student who asked me about this. So what I'm just showing here is, this is a bone folder. Unfortunately, this one that I bought, I've never opened it. It has a little bit of a curve here. Some of them are flat, made in China, like everything else. You want to have a flat, that's an alternative to this mukta, right? Which, I'm very much focused on being able to shop locally, because most of us are here in the United States, not all of us.
Yeah.
So what I often do next, here's another way to thin out, right? I kind of prefer to push here to thin out. And again, when I turn my hand here, let me just
Can I add something there?
Of course.
If the pen is hard, a hard pen, you can get off more towards the end. But if it's a soft pen, you have to be careful. If you
Right.
get off too much, then it's going to break.
Right. It's weak and it's too thin and it'll just sort of break. So the other thing, especially with bamboos, you see it's shiny. You see the top side, right? There's actually a skin. So I take
Yeah.
a little time and kind of try to flatten that top. Now, when I first started with Zach Hoja, he was like, you can't sand it. Then, of course, now you can sand it. He's very, he has his ways, but he cuts a good pen, because what you want is you want to find just the right thickness there. Now, I happen to know through years of experience that that is still thicker than I want. This is so much easier to do not on the camera, but this is why, you know, for those of us who don't see as well as we once did, I like to have this because I can see, and what I'll do is I'll try to show you guys when I have it just the way I want it. Now, I know I'm taking a long time, but that's another thing, is that we're carving a tool here, you know, and it may take some time, but it's worth it. It's really worth it now. So I'm not as thin as I want to be yet, but this is just the way I've been doing it. I put my pen tip maybe 1/4 of an inch in. Okay, it didn't snap, but I can feel it's gone through. So now there is a crack. It'll be more obvious later. I'll show you. So I'm gonna, again, I'm shaving, right? I'm shaving so delicately.
Yeah, a couple of hairs each time. That's what you can think.
You know, and that way I'm not messing it up. And there are people who do this whole process much faster. So I'm going to put this on a little bit of a slant. Up. And did you hear that snap? So that snap was the final cut, and you want it straight down. Now, I'm going to look very closely at the tip, right? Because sometimes one side is I can see it's a little messy. I'm just going to check that it's smooth.
Yeah.
It's even.
Smooth and even. Yeah. That's
And
important criteria.
I'm just going to show you, because I know sometimes people have trouble with this. This is how I actually look. Now I see that one side is a little thicker than the other side. So I'm going to take a minute. And again, you know, this is not a race. You're going to mess up some pens, you know, and I've messed up. I mean, Deniz and I have messed up. There was a little bit of a snap. Many a pen.
Yes.
Many a pen. I mean, I remember what they used to tell me, including you, Deniz. He used to tell me to take matches, wooden matches, to practice on. I mean, sometimes having trouble with my Tep-Ta ink, but anyway, I just want, you know, the real proof is in making the stroke.
And when you make the stroke, when you make a dot or something, you will feel if there is still, if the pen tip is not smooth enough or not even enough. If it's wavy, if there are spots where you feel like, oh, there's some thick spots and then there's some thinner places. So you will keep adjusting it by practicing writing with it.
See, now what I noticed is one side of my pen was a lot thinner than the other. And also, see, now once you dip in the ink, you can see the crack better. So I'm actually, you know, we try to keep the crack in the middle.
We can't see your hand at the moment.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. I just trimmed off a side. And there we go. So Do we have questions?
Yeah, I just saw in the chat box there are a couple of questions. Let me read them. Is there a special way of disposing the shavings? Yeah, we just mentioned that. How often do you need to sharpen your pens, and how do you know it needs a trim? Well, it depends on the quality of your pen, of course, and on the amount of practice you do with it. If you practice a lot, like many hours, maybe every two, every other day you need to trim your pen. And the way you understand it is when it gets mushy, when it's not sharp anymore, when there's maybe a hair on the side.
Right. The sides here, these corners can get rounded, or, they get a little hairy because the fiber starts to sort of stick out. Keep going.
Yeah, and then you kind of feel, okay, maybe I need to trim it. Another thing I just remembered, what was it? I was going to say something. Forgot.
Well, the bamboo generally lasts a little longer than the reed.
Yeah.
Here's another thing. It's like fruit, right? Everyone is different. You may get this box, for instance, of bamboo drinking straws, and some are harder and some are softer. You may order a bunch of reeds, and some are harder and some are softer. So it's not like, you'll feel it when you cut. The other thing is, especially as beginners, we have a habit of like pressing, right? Pressing in. I don't know if you can see, but I just indented there a little bit by pressing. You can't see. But the more you press, the more, see that little, that's like a nukta that's impressed into the paper. Most likely, the sooner your pen will get soft and spongy. And for instance, you never leave a pen in ink. You never leave a pen in water. I sometimes quickly dip in my water, and then I like to really keep my pen pretty clean. I dip it in water, or I have a moist paper towel. There's always some ink left on there, but you don't want the ink to build up, because I think that also adds to the mushiness.
Yes.
Mushy is a technical term.
Yeah, we always wipe off the pen whenever we are done with writing. We never let the ink accumulate and get dry on the tip. You can dip it into water and wipe it off on a napkin every time when you're done. Or when you start to write and you feel like there is some excess of ink remaining from the last time you wrote, you can dip it into water and again wipe it off at that moment as well. You need to keep it clean so that you're not having problems later on. What else was I thinking of? Yeah, I wanted to also talk about Java pens. If anybody is familiar with Java pen, should I share, Elinor?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm just going to put out some Java that I have.
Okay, so this is a Java stick. I don't know if it's very visible on the screen, but it's a flat stick. Yeah. And we use this especially for the script of Nesih, because it's a harder pen than reed, but it's softer than bamboo. And it's not as flexible as a reed pen, but because it's harder than a reed pen, it lasts longer, so you don't need to trim it as much as you do with a reed pen. But because it's a flat stick, it's not comfortable in your hand. So you need to do something with it to turn it into a pen.
Thin. It's very thin. It needs a handle. It needs a pen holder.
So if you have a stick like this, for example, you can maybe 10 centimeters or 8 centimeters long. You break it, get a regular reed pen, cut it, and stick this in. You need to find the thickness that is appropriate according to the thickness of your Java pen. You stick it in as far as it can go, and you leave like a small tip. like 2 centimeters long. You leave that out. Then if you feel like it's not firmly sitting in, you take a small piece of a match, place that in. Do I have an example? Yeah, in this one you can see it. Place it in there, as you can see here, so that the pen sits in firmly in the reed pen. And then you trim it as we described with a reed pen. It's the same way, it's just harder. So it's a little bit, challenging to cut it, but it's cut in the same way as a reed pen. So this is one option. They also sell in some places, they sell these pen holders, wooden. This is also an option. You can put a small piece of a Java stick in there. And because you have this length hidden in here, when you need to, when it gets small, you've used it, you've trimmed it many times and it's small, you just pull out a little more and you keep using the same stick.
Now, can you explain about the paper? Because we don't
Yeah,
have
I will.
any reeds in the United States.
Yeah. So the reason why we are putting it in the reed pen is because this is round and totally comfortable to write with. See, now I can use the Java pen. Another option of making a Java pen is, my husband found that himself. This is a piece of paper, half of A4 size. You place the stick in here and you roll it up again firmly. Firmly. If you do it with the stick, it will get really strong and tight.
So you're leaving some of the Java bamboo out.
Yeah. Or
sticking out, yeah.
you can cut it, you can cut it off later.
And I'll just say, the Java bamboo is hard to cut, but I cut it with like a wire cutter. Something like this. You learn how to use tools when you're a calligrapher. It's great.
Yeah. So it's rolled up on the stick. You can cut this off if you want. And then you just take some tape and you tape it together. But you need to, do it very strongly so that it stays in there. And then you can prepare it as we do with the other pens. Right now, I want to show you a better example. I did it quickly. This is the example that my husband prepared. Let me show you the tip. Look how tight it is.
And so could you use thicker paper to sort of build it up?
Yeah, you could.
Yeah.
And the yellow that you see is the paper tape. We put around the paper, we put paper tape till the bottom.
And you can pull that.
Yeah, but you need to exercise strength to be able to get it out. We did it very tightly.
Okay.
So now it's round like a reed pen. So it's very comfortable in your hand.
That's beautiful. That would be my method. I have to try that.
See how tight it's wrapped around the stick.
And I will tell you, if I can just say, it feels different because, for Nessie, let me just get a regular Nessie pen. So, here is a tiny little Nessie pen, right? And let me use this one. Like the tip of the nib, the tip just extends right here. When
should we share? Sorry, should we share your screen now?
Oh yeah, we should.
I'll stop.
There's just, you see how the tip of my pen extends right from the top of the pen, and it's right there. And my hand, as I hold it and write, gets used to that. But when you look at the Java pen, you see it's a little bit, it's not right there, right? It's a little bit below. And so it has a different feeling. But I have to tell you something. I've been, believe it or not, Deniz Hoja, I've been practicing my Nessie a lot lately, even though I haven't sent you anything. But I prefer these because I just do. I mean, in the end, after going back and forth, I really prefer these because I got used to that. And it might seem like a tiny little thing, but it makes a difference and you have to get used to it. That's all I want to say.
Yeah.
So give it a chance if you try one of these. And the thing is, the Java bamboo, you know, it's, I mean, all this stuff can be ordered. It can, but it's not, you're not going to find it if you have a local art supply store, which I don't know, unless you live in a big city in the United States, there aren't anymore. But you know, you have to order it from specialty places, but it's worth it.
Yeah. What I was going to say, yeah, it's again not a must to use a Java pen. It's an option, whatever you're comfortable with. That's like the main rule in calligraphy. Some people use a metal pen, which is also acceptable. Some people use the Java. Some people say, I can't, I tried, I can't write with it, and they continue with the reed pen. So these are all the alternatives that are available, and we wanted to show you all, especially the Java pen, because I get a lot of questions from students as to how to craft a Java pen. And you just have to try. And I mean, with trying, what I mean is not trying it for 5 minutes. Sometimes you have to stick to something for several weeks before you can get used to it, right? There's one question here that maybe you would like to answer because I don't know what they mean with that.
Oh.
What about polishing off the kalam tip with sanding paper?
Well, this, I think I mentioned this. At first, Zach Hoja forbade me to use sandpaper. Now, I want to say there's a reason. I have some, this is like 320 grit, and this is basically polishing paper like for jewelers. There's not a number on the back, but you know, I will, if you use very too rough a sandpaper, you can actually pull out fibers from the pen. I mean, the pen is ultimately a fibrous tool. So if you would use super fine sandpaper, I would then sort of polish it, and I would, let me just go back to the other camera, you know, like that. What I would do, where's that pen I just cut? You know, I might take a moment and go like this to just sort of smooth it out. I might even make like a stroke like that. And maybe, you know, what you're looking for is corners, you know, and then I might go over it with this because, you know, it'll pull off any extra hairs. The other thing I just held up before, oh, I don't know, what you're looking for is square corners. I don't think you can see it really well, but when you have this up to your eye, you can. This pen, I don't like it, but there are many people who do. This is a Pilot parallel pen. It is a fountain pen, but it's a good fountain pen. I mean, you can get a nice square corner. Flow isn't great, but what's happened here is that it's been trimmed on an angle. Now the thing is, you know, one could trim it thinner. It comes in preset widths, and this is very big for a Thuluth pen. And I personally, I mean, I use metal pens for italic and for copperplate, but I don't like metal pens for Arabic. I don't. But Some people really like it. I really think you can get used to anything, and you probably are going to get used to what you have. So I just want to put that out there as another option.
Okay, there's one more question. Do you split the Java pen as well? Yes, we do. And I want to show you something as well. Okay, for example, if you get into jelly thuluth, why do we have a slit in the pen? So that the ink can flow very well. If you don't have a slit, you can't write with it. This is this is the slit very clearly seen on a thuluth pen. If you have a regular thuluth size, one slit is enough. But when you're going to write jelly thuluth, bigger thuluth script, and you have a pen which is, I don't know how many centimeters is this. This is like almost two centimeters.
Wow.
For a 2 centimeters pen, you need more slits, more than one. This one has 4, so that the ink can flow better. So with a Java pen, yes, we need to put in one slit. You can see it. Let me show you. Yeah, here you can see it. There's one in it, and the tip is like 0.5 millimeter, I think.
Wow.
Yeah, it's very small. Any other question?
There was a question about how thick or like how wide a nib, how wide you want the tip of the pen for thuluth. I think in general, it's between 2 and 3 millimeters, correct?
Yeah.
What would you, and I mean, when you get up to like 6, then it's jelly, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But what would you call something in between, or would you never do anything in between?
Yeah, I don't know. Bigger thuluth, I think.
Okay, right. Yeah.
I mean, Nesih is not written big.
No.
Nesih has maximum like 1, maybe
there are
1.5.
people. There are people.
I know there are people who are trying with it.
Classically, we don't do that. And
Yeah.
someone asked if there's a way to prepare reed. Some of them are soft. I mean, I don't think there is any preparation if you buy one. There's nothing. I mean, if it's soft, it's soft. And then save it and for your Java, holder.
Yeah, yeah. And when you're in a store and you can choose from the reed pens they have, like one criteria is to focus on the color as dark as possible, and that the pen is totally straight, not crooked, because that doesn't feel comfortable in your hand. But mainly it's the color that I focus on when I'm.
Are you going to talk about the sound?
No, I can't describe that.
Because if you're in a place, like Istanbul, where there are stores, what they do is they pick it up and they drop it on a tabletop, and it makes a sound, and they're like tuh or something,
Yeah.
It's funny.
Any other questions? Yeah, so if you want to speak up and say something, ask something, we can start the Q&A session, kind of. Or we're almost done, Anika? I don't know. We've been talking.
Yeah, if you want to ask a question, we can either unmute you or you can continue to put it in the chat. We can take another couple more minutes.
We covered a lot, I think, right?
We did. And I mean, the main thing is you just have to practice.
One more thing that I was thinking of. If you happen to get in-person classes, if you are seeing a master weekly or, as frequent as possible, I don't know where you are all living, and you're trying yourself to trim a pen, trim a couple, take it to class, and ask your master to make comments on the way you're cutting it so that you get some feedback on what you're doing wrong. Yeah. Like you can ask your questions on, I tried to write with it, but it did this or it did that, and I don't know how to solve it, so that your master can give you some feedback. Try to make them verbally explain it to you what you're doing wrong. Or if you have any classmate that you can get together and practice cutting the pen with, that would also be very nice. We did that as well with some friends, and it was really helpful that you kind of support each other.
Having community, it's like everybody moves along a little smoother when you have a community.
Can you please explain the drop sound test if possible? I have a collection of reeds and bamboos and would love to understand this.
I don't think they do that with bamboo. I've never seen it. I've seen it with reeds. I don't really know. Do you? Do you get it?
No.
Yeah, I think the higher pitched the sort of sound is, the better, but I don't know.
I can't say anything, unfortunately. I don't have a master just starting your class next week. Would you be able to provide feedback if we send photos? Yeah, sure. I try to do whatever I can in online classes. So yeah, if it works out, of course. If you send very clear photos of your pens, I can try to make comments on the way you're cutting it. What is the size of Nesih Kalam? 0.5 millimeter or 1? 1 actually is like the best size for practicing with it while you are getting the training. Does it have a slit in it? Every pen in every script has a slit. It's a must. Otherwise, the ink doesn't flow as needed. And when you're dipping your pen in the ink well, you also need to be very careful. We don't dip in fully the tip of the pen. For Thuluth, it's a little bit more. For Nesih, it's really very little that you kind of touch the lika, the raw silk in your inkwell. But that comes with practice.
I put a lot of emphasis on dipping the pen into the lika and turning the lika. It's, you know, as much as important as having a really good pen is, pen tip, how there are ways to sort of treat the lika and the ink and even just the dipping. I mean, this is the thing about calligraphy, all these tiny little details. You don't just dip in, no. And everybody who takes my class knows this.
Hasan Hoca has a nice way of describing it. Master Hasan Çelebi. He says, when you don't look when you're dipping your pen into the inkwell, and you can feel how much ink you have on the tip of your pen, then you are a calligrapher.
But it takes time. And it also, you know, the feeling of the pen, the connection of the pen to the paper is another thing. Over time, you feel it, because ultimately your hand has a lighter touch on the paper, but it has a complete connection.
Yeah.
And that's something that just comes with practice. That's, you know, I mention it to people when I teach, but you can't, it just comes with practice. It comes with experience, and then it means something to you. You'll understand.
And the way we hold the pen, I can say something about it. Some people hold it very close to the tip. That's not very comfortable, according to me. You need to kind of, you know, if this is the length of your pen, you need to kind of hold it back here.
Yeah.
And without pushing, my husband describes it as you need to hold it as if you are holding a bird in your hand and you don't want to hurt the bird.
Or hold it like you were going to write on a baby's bottom.
Yeah, that's a nice way of describing it.
And the other thing I often suggest to people is try writing on your own, like, wrist. You know, like if you're writing here on your skin, you know, look, I'm getting a stroke. I mean, it's a little bumpy there. I got veins, but I'm not pushing down very hard. But yet it's the full width, right? Yeah, I mean, if you're afraid of getting ink on your skin. You're in the wrong field. But anyway, but that's another way. But I think we should, I mean, we could probably talk about all kinds of things forever and ever and ever. Because that's how it is with calligraphy. But
Okay. There's one more question, Aishah.
okay.
Is the cutting angle subject to the script or to the calligrapher's grip?
Well, I would say both.
Yeah.
I'm, you know, for right-handed people, if you're looking down, you know, well, here, the back of the pen. Let me get the bigger. Where did you go? The bigger one, the darker one. So I'm looking, right? I'm looking at the underside of my pen. I'm a right-handed person. You see this left tip is higher than the right.
We can't see it.
Oh, well, I'm just holding it up in front of me.
Okay, now it's good.
And what happens is I found that angle, you know, through my teacher. He cut my pens that way and I didn't have a trouble with it. And what eventually happens is, you know, your mukta, I mean, this might seem ridiculous, but I don't know if you can see that. You know, there are little slit marks already on this cutting board. So I just put it down and put my pen parallel to that. You know, left-handed, we have some left-handed masters and excellent students, and they may put it on a, you know, the opposite angle or just cut it straight. I think some people like it a little, you know, more of an angle. I know for like Talik, it's a flatter angle.
Flatter. I remember that I was doing Nesih with Zekeriya Hoja, and I cut my pen like a Talik pen, thinking that I had given it enough of an angle, but it wasn't enough. It was pretty flat. And he said, you seem to work very well with it. Maybe you have the talent of writing Nesih with a Talik pen. So he didn't interfere with the angle, and I continue it that way. And then later when I got married to my husband, he said, oh, this is too flat. You need to increase the angle. We increased the angle and my handwriting changed, and I struggled a lot with it. And then I complained and I said, I will get back to my previous angle, because I think I'm more comfortable with that. So it really depends on your own grip as well. But yeah, for both Nesih and Thulus, we do need an angle. But the amount of it depends on, you know, your own comfort, kind of. Okay, yeah. Any other questions? Thank you. It's an honor seeing you both.
Well, and it's an honor to be here for all of you. I want to encourage you. You know, Deniz has classes. I have classes. You can register for my classes on harmonyofline.net. And all your classes go through Scripts and Scribes, right, Deniz?
Yes. Yes.
And it's kind of amazing how I certainly am not a master. I'm a proficient calligrapher and I can teach and I love teaching. But, you know, Deniz and I have known each other for a long part of this journey. And it's kind of, you know, at one point, both of us thought we would never learn to trim a pen.
Yeah.
So it's kind of amazing.
I really had a hard time as well in the beginning.
I was going to quit.
And I learned, and nobody was teaching me. None of the girls in the class were explaining things to me. And then finally there was this Syrian guy. He was willing to teach me, and I sat down with him and he taught me the details of it. And after some weeks, Hasan Hoca asked me, who taught you how to cut the pen? And I said, I worked with the Syrian Enes. And Hoca was kind of, he's a very nationalistic about calligraphy. Yes. So he was like, you learned it from an Arab guy? I said, yes. he explained it to me. So I learned it from a Syrian guy.
He
And
helped
yeah,
me too. And he kind of, I don't know about you, Deniz, but he teased me. Like, you don't
yeah,
have to turn red.
always. Yeah,
And
always.
it's like, hey, nobody does this in America. I have no friends around, live around me who are calligraphers. But I will say that there are Latin script calligraphers who do use a bamboo. It's going to be trimmed like we trim our tips for a left-handed Latin script calligrapher. But anyway, thank you all.
Yeah, thank you all for coming, and hopefully we were helpful.